So good afternoon to our third session of this seminar on the foundations of Buddhism. So our first talk was about what characterizes Buddhist teachings and how the practice of Buddhism is sort of very relevant even today in our 21st century. And we discussed then this morning some fundamental ideas about the Buddhist view on how we come to experience our conditioned existence. And now we will look at a short introduction into the practice of meditation. So before we start, I would like to invite you all to join me in renewing refuge and cultivating the four immeasurables. Until I have reached full awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By means of beneficial actions such as generosity, may I attain enlightenment in order to benefit beings. Until I reach full awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By means of beneficial actions such as generosity, may I attain enlightenment in order to benefit beings. Until I have reached full awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By means of beneficial actions such as generosity, may I attain enlightenment in order to benefit beings. May all beings find happiness in the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering in the cause of suffering. May they not be separated from the perfect happiness that is free from suffering. May they abide in great equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all beings find happiness in the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering in the cause of suffering. May they not be separated from the perfect happiness that is free from suffering. May they abide in great equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all beings find happiness in the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering in the cause of suffering. May they not be separated from the perfect happiness that is free from suffering. May they abide in great equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. So thank you very much. Now, to introduce, so to speak, the subject of meditation and also in order to then present you basic methods of meditation. I think it's first important to situate this practice and then speak about why it is so important. Earlier in the previous talk, we spoke about the foundation, or let's say the origin of our experience of samsara and the defects of samsara. The Buddha showed us how to actually free ourselves from dissatisfaction. And the Buddha taught us, so to speak, a remedy. I was speaking about in relation to the Four Noble Truths, that the Buddha is like a doctor. He taught not only our problem, but the origin of our problem, and made the prognostic that we can be cured from it, and then also taught us how to actually do that, specifically the concrete method. So this involves, there are, of course, I'm sure you've heard of many different Buddhist lineages, traditions from different countries, different organizations also today. Whatever that Buddhist organization, or tradition or lineage, whatever they practice, all falls into three main things, which is one, the practice of you could say moral conduct, or ethics, or discipline, in other words. Shila is the Sanskrit term. And the second is the practice of meditation, samadhi, and the third, most important, is practice of prajna, or wisdom, translated as wisdom. So there is not a fourth one. All the methods fall into one of these three. So when it comes to the practice of this ethics, this is extremely important and this is the very foundation of the path. If you cannot follow a discipline, you cannot make any progress. So the idea here is the aim of Buddhist practice, as you've seen, is to become awakened, to free yourself from becoming within conditioned existence and the perpetuation of conditioned existence. And this is not done by someone else. You have to do this yourself. The Buddha said, I can show you how to become awakened. Whether you become awakened or not depends on your own effort. He cannot make us become awakened. If he could, he would have already done it, of course. Our confusion, all that depends on ourselves. So the Buddhist path is something that we have to follow ourselves based on, of course, we have a lot of help here, the teachings, the teachers, the help of other practitioners and so forth. But however, nonetheless, it is something that we have to ourselves cultivate. So the first of these three trainings is the training of ethics. We will speak about this more later on, but however here, the basis of this is non-violence, not harming other sentient beings. And this practice cannot be done without mindfulness. Meaning that if you want to make a certain change, if you want to go from confusion to awakening, if you want to overcome ignorance, it's something you have to do yourself, and it won't happen all by itself. Somebody else won't do it for you, and it won't happen all by itself. You have to make an effort, and this effort can be done on the basis of the tool of mindfulness. And without mindfulness, if you're mindless, you will not make any progress. That means mindless here is if you learn something and you forget about it, if your state of mind is kind of distracted, you're always daydreaming, then you will not make any progress. The idea of here of mindfulness is that you are aware of where you are and what is it you should do, what are your limits, how to make progress. You've learned this, and as you've learned this, you're applying yourself to it. So for example, in the case of Buddhist ethics, you learn what is the conduct that is harmful to you and harmful to others that you should avoid. What is the conduct that is beneficial for yourself and beneficial towards others that you should follow. And so you are mindful, you're aware of your behavior, of the thoughts that arise in your mind, and remembering what is it you're supposed to do. You follow through trying to implement that change. So that's the basis of mindfulness and ethics. And this is also something that is very important in the practice of meditation. And it's on the basis of this kind of basic training that you can then practice meditation. So one of the points with the meditation is also creating the favorable circumstances to meditate. To just say, oh, I want to meditate. If you are somehow not prepared for it, you are not instructed in it properly, you can think you are doing meditation, call it meditation, but you'll not actually be doing meditation truly and properly. So in order to do meditation really properly, one has to think about first why one meditates. Also think about our motivation. Develop as a foundation ethics, discipline of how you want to lead your life. That's very important. That means here try to avoid negative, unwholesome deeds and follow through with a wholesome, compassionate lifestyle. On the basis of this, then receive, of course, the instructions on meditative practice, and then you can follow with it. So when you receive meditative instructions as a beginner, it is often recommended that you seek out a peaceful place. So there are a number of recommendations as where to practice meditation and what circumstances to practice meditation. And one of the ideas here is with meditation is that you have to try to develop the most favorable conditions to do it. And this means somehow avoiding all the distractions you have. There are so many things that can distract us. So this is how, also Buddhist ethics is very important because it enables us to have a simple life, be content, be less engaged with all the material things, the external preoccupations of different sorts. So sometimes it is recommended to go as a beginner to really learn and pursue meditation, to go to a quiet place, a place that is where you will not be distracted by sounds, or by people, or by different circumstances. But also, the place in itself is not sufficient. You also have to work with finding quiet place in your mind, so to speak. You might, want to meditate, but still think, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, have all these desires and attachments and hopes and fears and so forth. And so you have to try to overcome those also to a certain degree, because if not, you want to meditate, but these distractions and things will always come about. So, you have to be able physically, in your surroundings, physically, mentally, be able to put yourself in a calm state, a state that is free from distractions, agitations, ideally. Okay, that's what is kind of recommended in general. So putting those points aside, and before we go into more in detail about meditation itself, I think first we should look at why is it important for us to meditate? Why should we meditate? Okay. So essentially the practice of meditation is looking inwardly, working with our mind. Right now, our focus is all focused externally. The external things are important. We don't try to really understand our own mind or work with our own mind. So the practice of meditation is trying to kind of befriend your mind, work with your mind, develop the qualities of your mind. And one can wonder, why is it important to do that? Somehow one might feel that mind is very secondary. My body is more important. I should maybe go to the gym, that's maybe more important. My finances are more important. Maybe I should make money, that's more important. But the matter of the fact is that finances are ephemeral, health is ephemeral, whereas the mind is fundamentally what you are, what you're left with once you lose everything else. So it is somehow the most important thing. And from a perspective of Buddhist teachings, happiness, joy, fulfillment, freedom, and all that is not something that much that depends on external circumstances. It depends on the mind, because everything that we experience, there's nothing that doesn't happen within our mind. You cannot say, I'm going to put my mind aside and go watch a movie or go experience this. It's always the content of your mind. So whether it is the experience of samsara or the experience of nirvana, of awakening, these are all related to your mind. It's not something that happens independently from your mind. In this sense, the Buddha himself said, for example, in certain of the Mahayana sutras, that this world, this universe, everything is not independent of the mind. It is just an experience of your mind. What we call the universe, what we call the world, what we call this or that, it is fundamentally just an experience of your mind. We look at this world as something, we see it as something very, distinct. This is what I explained already earlier in the previous talk. We think of it as something very, very distinct, but actually it is not very distinct from your own mind. It remains an experience of your mind. Although the impression of it being distinct is just a way of our mind at looking at its own experience. So in this sense, our experience of the world as it is, it's just due to how our mind misleads itself, how our mind is confused about itself and about reality, as I explained earlier when speaking about ignorance. So therefore, somehow there is nothing more important for us to do than to try to work with our mind, because the mind is the key to all of our experiences, to whether we will be happy, unhappy, whether we will be free or not free. All of this just depends upon our mind and nothing else, finally. So really focusing on our mind is extremely important. Our mind is, in other words, the source of all our problems, as well as the source of all the solutions. All the solutions are found within our mind. All our problems, all our difficulties have their root within the confusion of our mind. Okay? So therefore, it's very important to look at your mind, try to understand your mind, try to know what the true nature of your mind is. So that's the reason why, for example, we should listen to the teachings of the Buddha, reflect on them. And if we do that, but we just leave it to that, that means we have, we've heard the teachings of the Buddha, we've reflected upon it, we just leave it to that, we will not either make progress. Like, the fact of you can call yourself a Buddhist and come to Buddhist teachings, identify as a Buddhist, or culturally identify yourself as a Buddhist and so forth, that in itself will not lead you to become awakened. You can have all the external signs of a Buddhist. I don't know what depending on each tradition or whatever, that will not make you become awakened. Whether you will make progress or not depends on whether you put into practice the teachings of the Buddha. So having heard the teachings, having understood them, having reflected upon them, how do you implement them really in your life? As I said earlier, of course, through Buddhist ethics, but that is not sufficient. Ethics alone will not lead you to awakening. You need to practice meditation. And when we speak of meditation, there are two aspects to meditation. One aspect, one goal of the practice of meditation is to reach a calm abiding. And the other goal is to cultivate discernment, the recognition of the true nature of mind, the transcending confusion. And that is actually the practice of wisdom, cultivating wisdom. That is done, of course, through study and learning, hearing about what the Buddha have taught, understanding, for example, emptiness, understanding what one means by the nature of mind, but just understanding it, intellectualizing it, or having concepts about it will not bring us to experiencing it directly. So this is something that you have to do also in the practice of meditation. So meditation here is a very key, important part of Buddhist practice. In other words, if you don't meditate, just having heard the teachings of the Buddha, following Buddhist ethics, can only give you relative good results, will not enable you to attain the ultimate good result of true freedom from conditioned existence. So meditation is a key part of Buddhist practice in this sense. So why do we have to cultivate first, so to speak, calm abiding? If your mind is unable to be calm and stable, it will not be able to truly cultivate wisdom enough so mind can transform itself and transcend completely confusion. The wisdom that we may gain through our reflection, our understanding will be like a very weak flame that can go out any minute. We can lose it. It will not really be actualized truly. So to do that, we need to first be able to gain the stability of our mind. So now, before we go into more details of meditation, one should, in the beginning, before we practice meditation, think, of course, very much about our motivation. Why is it that we want to practice meditation? This is very important. So here we should practice meditation not just to be calm and stressless or to be happier in our life. These are maybe methods of meditation you can find quite predominantly today. Everybody talks about meditation today. It's practiced in many different forms. But without that motivation, the motivation is just to be happier now. In this sense, in this case, in Buddhist practice, one should think of it as a means to attain truly awakening, to give true purpose and true meaning to our life. And to help us with our reflection, there are 4 kind of meditations that to help us with developing the right attitude, the right motivation, to help us really turn ourselves towards awakening, turn ourselves away from all the distractions and the world and so forth, as a kind of a foundation for the meditative practice. It's very important that we go through what is known as the common or foundational preliminaries here, which is 4 reflections that we should integrate in our life. So the very first of these 4 is understanding how fortunate we are. That means here we might feel that, oh, attaining awakening is something that's not accessible to me. It's something very difficult. I'm not capable enough. I'm not good enough. We can have all kinds of feelings like that. But the matter of fact is that we are fundamentally not different than who the historical Buddha was. And we actually are maybe even more fortunate because we have everything presented to us. We just have to put it into practice. Buddha had to rely on his great merit and his wisdom, and he did not have everything. We have everything put on a plate, everything explained, everything made accessible for us, thanks to the historical Buddha. So we have that great fortune to have met the Dharma and to have really the capacity to attain awakening. I mean, of course, we might feel, oh, I'm old, I'm young, I don't have this, I don't have that. Perfection is not of this world, so to speak. You can never find a perfect situation, but to a certain degree, the situation you have is perfect because you have met with the Dharma, you have access to the teachings, and more than that, you actually are really inspired by it and you want to practice the Dharma. So this really, your desire to practice the Dharma, your desire to practice meditation, your intention to do that is really something extremely precious. So if you have come here and you have met the Dharma and you want to pursue awakening, it's really something that sets you apart from all other sentient beings, and that is somehow the reason why you can, in this very lifetime, actually attain awakening. You shouldn't think it's something that is that far. If you really put your heart and your effort to it, you make it your priority, it's something that you can really achieve in this lifetime. So the idea here with this first reflection is, I have all the circumstances I need to make progress, but if I don't make use of these favorable circumstances now, then I might lose it and not be able to recover it again in my next life. So the idea here is, I shouldn't waste my time in futile, in vain pursuits. I should really make the practice of meditation my priority. There's nothing more important, nothing more noble, nothing more meaningful that I can do. So I'm saying this as a guideline for your own reflection, but you have to come to that conclusion yourself. Not because I said it, you have to believe me. I'm just explaining you the matter of fact, how things are. You have to come yourself to that conclusion to really see that for yourself. Not because as a visiting teacher here in Chicago for a few days, he told me that. Don't take my word for it. You have to figure that out on yourself and come to that conclusion yourself. So if you come to that conclusion, then naturally you will not want to engage into futile activities. So the proof that you come to that conclusion, that you have really done that preliminary practice, is that you're disinterested really genuinely by futile and vain activities. Being distracted, doing meaningless things is something that really does not inspire you, interest you at all. That's kind of the mark or the sign that you have really understood this one point, that you've really gone through this reflection. And the second point is reflecting on impermanence. So the first one is reflect on our precious condition that we have. Second is reflecting on impermanence. Third is reflecting on karma. Fourth is reflecting on the defects of conditioned existence. So these are 4 reflections that one should engage in. So the second point is impermanence. We have a tendency to think, that, oh, I'm so lucky, I have this favorable condition, I have the Buddha Dharma, I'm so special. We can get even pride in that. That would be not understanding the purpose of this reflection properly. And furthermore, just have the feeling that, yeah, I'll always have that. The fact is, no, life is ephemeral. This favorable conditions that you have are something that is short-lived, and everything changes. Everything is ephemeral. Look at how the world is changing. Look at how cities are changing. Look around you, all the people that you know. Some of them have passed away today. Those people that you knew who are no longer here, yet they were your friends, but they passed away. Maybe for some of you, your parents, for some of you, your siblings. Consider that. Life is extremely ephemeral. Yes, we might think, yes, in this part of the world, very developed, very rich, where we have all the favorable, comfortable conditions, we can expect to live longer. We have good treatments, good medicine, and so forth. But accidents happen. And although there is a general kind of life expectancy of this or that much time, you cannot be sure of it. The only thing that you can be sure of for sure is that one day you will have to die. There has not been a single person in history that has not passed away, even great awakened beings. And the one thing you cannot be sure of at all is when it will happen. People die young, people die healthy, people die sick, people die old, people die eating something, people die slipping on the stairs, people die in accidents, people die in their sleep. All kinds of death can happen at any moment. Not only is death certain, but unfortunately its moment is uncertain. So therefore, practice should not be postponed. Like, you shouldn't think, oh, I'll practice later on when I retire, or when I have finished doing this or that. It's really, practice of meditation is something very important and should be done right away. It should be our priority. And so really, if you are making it your priority and you're not wasting your time, then you have kind of engaged in this reflection properly and come to the proper conclusion. Then third is about causality. So the idea here is, once you are dead, you don't have kind of the limited possibilities of choice you have now. You really follow, as we saw earlier in the 12 parts of interdependent origination, your kind of dispositions and your confusion, and you will follow what all the dispositions you have developed, and you will take rebirth accordingly, according to your previous actions. And so there's somehow a lack of freedom there. Right now, maybe I can decide to think otherwise, change my karma. So once you're dead, if you haven't really made progress on the path, you will follow naturally your previous dispositions. So knowing this, knowing the causality of karma, one should look at, introspect on your mind, think about our motivations, and make sure, no matter what, to never fall into unwholesome deeds, but always practice the wholesome deeds. And so this is a daily practice. Every day, look at your motivation. In the morning, before you engage into action, try to think about, how can I make this day meaningful? What should I do today that is meaningful spiritually for myself, and how can I benefit others? And at the end of the day, reflect on what you have done. What you have done is positive, is according to what you had projected in the morning. Rejoice. If there are things you shouldn't have done, regret them, and try to make sure that you do not repeat that in the next day. And before you go to sleep, think about with joy the opportunities you have tomorrow to make more progress, and look forward to that. And then according to different meditative practices or methods, you can fall asleep with awareness, with altruistic motivation at least, good intention. And so in this way, every day, one should try to implement this effort. So this is the third kind of reflection. So here, the reflection here implicitly implies understanding the 12 parts of interdependent origination, the causality of karma that we spoke about. And understanding this is the resolve never to engage into negative actions. Whether or not you truly need that resolve and that reflection is thorough or not depends on the action. Really, even at the cost of your life, you will not engage in negative actions. Then this is somehow kind of measure that you are really, this is something that you really understood and you really implemented. And then the fourth is the defects of conditioned existence. So, as you know, the conditioned existence is marked by dissatisfaction. You have so here the idea is basically all those pleasurable things in life. It's not about disliking them. It's not because samsara we know is dissatisfying that we should hate it. If happy and pleasurable things arrive, it is fine. You shouldn't have attachment for it. Meaning here that understanding that conditioned existence is characterized by dissatisfaction. All the circumstances are like a banquet offered to someone who is condemned to death. You know, there's nothing really to be attached to. Imagine that you're on the death row, and today comes the day of your execution. And a few minutes before, someone tells you that you won the lottery, $1 billion. There's no reason really to rejoice. It's a little bit like that. Actually, all the things you gain, it is hollow. It is without a consistency, without permanence, without a reliability. So understanding this, without attachment to samsara, one should pursue awakening. So these are somehow, I've just kind of summarized them a little bit. They are, these reflections can be implemented, how to say, made more clear, let's say, with a lot of explanations and a lot of teachings that point to these important points. So eventually, reading about those, you can read in different texts teaching the preliminary practices. For example, the preliminary practice to Mahamudra. There are few translations, so I invite you to read those, think about that, and this is something to reflect on in our everyday life. And this reflection will lead us to making really meditation our priority. So if we're able to make our meditation our priority and practice meditation thoroughly, then the consequence of that is we will be able to truly cultivate or actualize the innate qualities of our mind and become free of future conditioning existence, find happiness and well-being in our present life, and overcome all fear and difficulties at the moment of death, and avoid all rebirth within samsara if we attain awakening. So there is great benefits to the practice of meditation. Awakening is attained thanks to meditation and wisdom. So there is really nothing more important for us to do. Now, looking at the method of meditation. So I will first focus here on shamatha meditation. So the method here, and then we'll do a session of meditation together. And the shamatha meditation presented here is based on the meditative tradition of Mahamudra. But I'll try to here just simplify a little bit. Eventually, of course, the best is to be able to follow through a meditation seminar on a meditation, a particular meditation, the instructions of Mahamudra, to receive them and to do them thoroughly and properly. In our tradition, we emphasize a lot the importance of posture. So posture, you can speak about so in other words, how to sit and how to let your mind be. So we can talk about, so to speak, physical posture and mental posture. Okay. So here for the physical posture, there are a few varieties of postures. However, the general posture is known as the posture in 7 points. Okay? So the 7 points, meaning there are 7 points you have to try to maintain in your posture. So we can start first with one of the most important ones, which is to keep your back straight. So here, you don't do meditation lying down. You could eventually, but this posture doesn't teach that. If you're a beginner meditator, You shouldn't do it lying down or your eyes closed. You might fall asleep, or running and looking all around. You might get very much distracted. So there is a posture that is recognized by all great meditators as the most how would I say it, most beneficial posture, in the sense that if we adopt that posture, naturally our mind becomes very stable, very clear. There's even a story of once a monkey that saw a meditator in the perfect posture, and just because he thought it was funny, he would sit and imitate that posture. And because he was imitating that posture, he got to experience calm abiding, and he developed clairvoyance. A monkey, thanks to just imitating the posture. So the posture here is considered very important, because if we develop this posture, then the circulation of our blood, our breathing, all the different liquids and air and electricity in our body flow very smoothly. And this enables our mind to become calm. So this is recognized. I mean, meditators have found this posture to really enhance their meditative practice. So what we generally use is we use a little cushion for the meditation. Traditionally, it's a square little cushion. Now we use more the Zen style cushion, which is these round cushions. And this helps us maintain our back straight. So the first point of the posture is to keep your back straight. Second point is to keep your shoulders open. That means your shoulders are not like this, but nicely open. Okay, comfortable. When we say back straight, it also means here that you don't necessarily have tension in your back. You're not like clenching your muscles. When your back is straight, somehow it holds itself without tension. Okay? Your shoulders open. Second point. Third point is your hands. You put your hands, the right hand, on top of the left hand. Palm turns upwards. And you leave your hands on your lap, and they fall about 3 or 4 finger widths below your navel, your lap. Then there's the posture of the legs. Here, if you can sit in the cross-legged posture on the ground, then you can do either the half or the full lotus posture. I think it's called in the West. And Tibetans call it the Vajra posture. So difference of names. So if you can do the full one, it's like this. And if you can do the simple one, it's like this. And so whatever is most comfortable. Also depending on how supple you are. If you can do neither, then you can also do it sitting on a chair. And in that case, you would keep your feet flat on the ground. So that's the kind of posture. Your hands, sometimes when you're sitting on the chair, it's more comfortable to just let it on the thighs. That's also possible. So that's the kind of the most kind of loose, simplified posture adapted to our modern needs, or let's say lack of flexibility. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 is the chin. So your shoulders open, Then you bring your chin in slightly. That means you're not sitting like this. Bring your chin slightly in. Okay? And then no tension in your jaws. You're not grinding your teeth, nor are you letting your mouth completely open. Your tongue touches the palate. The teeth don't touch. Your lips are one on top of another. That's the kind of restful posture, natural restful posture of your jaw. And then seventh, the last, somehow most important point is your eyes, your gaze. So here, we don't close our eyes because if you close your eyes, this will lead you to become drowsy. Sometimes it can be easier in the beginning to feel calm because we generally, when we close our eyes, we generally are in more of a state of rest. And so we can experience certain calmness due to that. So if you're very stressed or whatever, you can try that. But eventually, you should try to not close your eyes. And if you have them completely open, that can also lead to distraction in the case of calm abiding meditation. So here for calm abiding meditation, it is recommended that you keep your eyes semi-closed. That means you are looking in the space in front of you in the angle of your nose, an angle of the tip of your nose. So that's the 7-point posture. It is also known as the posture of Vairochana. Okay. So the 7-point posture of Vairochana. So then there's secondly for meditation here is the mental posture. So here it is important that we don't think about the past, we don't think about the future. Just let the mind in its present state, that is extremely clear, aware, and free of concept, and try to let our mind be in that state in perfect equilibrium, meaning here that our mind is neither drowsy nor excited. It is just clear, present. The past, of course, is something that does not exist anymore. So thinking about the past is completely useless. It's vain because you cannot bring it back. Thinking about the future also is meaningless because the future too does not exist. It has not yet come to be. And thinking about it will not make it come to be. So it is unnecessary to anticipate on the future. And if you look at the present instant of consciousness, you cannot really find irreducible present instant. You cannot find a irreducible present instant, truly existing, substantial present moment. It's something that is kind of unconceivable. It's something that is inexpressible, neither existent nor non-existent, neither good nor bad. There's no characteristics that you can find to it. So without trying to do anything with it, just let it be. Let the mind be as it is. The mind that is, as I said, luminous earlier and empty, without grasping it, without grasping anything. Just let that mind be as it is and try to remain in that state. So here, to help us, we can focus our mind on some object you can take just in front of you. Just focus our gaze on one point. Or you can use just focusing on the air going in and out of our nostril. But what you're trying to do is just let the mind relax in its natural state, not trying to contrive it, not trying to oblige it. You try to make the mind stop thinking. It's like a wild animal that you put in a cage. It will become more fierce, the same way the mind will become even more agitated. So it's not about trying to stop your mind, control it. It's just to try to let the mind relax in its natural state, that is aware, yet aware. It is empty. There's nothing you can find of it as existing, non-existing. You're not trying to conceive of it in any way. Just let the mind settle and maintain your state of mind there. And if you're, if you need some kind of point to focus on, you can just focus on the breathing coming in and out. But that point of focus is like, it's not what you're trying to meditate. You're not trying to cultivate attention on the breath. What you're trying to do actually is just let the mind settle in its natural state, be calm, clear. If you let your mind be, then all the agitation of the mind will subside. It's a little bit like a pond that you've been stirring around. All the mud has come to the surface. If you stop stirring it and you let it be, all the mud and impurities will settle in the bottom and the pond will become completely clear and transparent. The same way, if you let the mind be, settle in its natural state, luminous and empty, then the mind will become extremely clear, extremely calm. And then with that clarity, that calmness, you'll also experience a natural well-being. This is what you're trying to cultivate. Calm abiding has these three qualities of being calm. And calm means there's no stress, no agitation, no emotions, no anger, no desire, no concepts whatsoever. It is extremely clear, meaning that here there is no drowsiness, no sleepiness. Mind is extremely pleasant, present, extremely aware. The clarity of the mind is much greater than usual because the mind is not disturbed, not agitated. It is not under any form of stress whatsoever. And the mind, when left like this in its natural state, is also naturally in a state of well-being, innate well-being there. That doesn't depend on any other external conditions. It is just present together with the mind, so to speak. Okay, so this is what you should try to aim at. Now, of course, naturally, the hindrances and difficulties you meet with in practice of meditation is your mind unable to become calm, to settle, there are thoughts that arise, concepts that arise, distractions that come about. So in this case, if a thought or concept arises, don't try to push it away or suppress it in any way. You can't really suppress it. That means if you try to suppress it, you're engaging with it. It will lead to yet another thought. And that thought will lead to another thought. You're already distracted, in other words. So when the thought arises, the important part is to observe it, to see it arise, to recognize it arise. And then here, just to relax the mind, come back to the point of focus, which is breathing, the air going through our nostrils, in and out. Come back to that, and then observe again the mind. Let it just be calm and clear. Let it settle in its natural state without trying to do anything with it. And so if the thought arises, just look at it and relax. Let the mind just settle. The thought cannot do anything. You're not suppressing it. You're not following it. You're not engaging with it. Yet you are not ignoring it. You know it. It's present. It arises. But you just relax your mind. That thought in itself will disappear. It cannot carry you anywhere. So, in other words, the key point here is to meditation is. Some people might think it's like you have to force your concentration, and there's kind of a level of stress people develop not to be distracted. And that is in itself kind of a distraction. So the key to meditation is really to, I would say, to just let the mind relax, to free it from all tension, to not try to force your mind to be something else than it is already. So what you're trying to do with the meditation is not trying to make your mind become something. You're just trying to let the mind be itself, rest in its natural state. So this natural state, of course, is to be distinguished from our state by default, which is actually not a natural state. It's a state of confusion, of agitation, of constant stress, of tension there in all our normal states. Here it's something that is free from all of that. So I'd like you to do a short session of meditation with me, following these guidelines, and then we can discuss these different points and clarify them if necessary. Yes. Do you have any questions?
You do. When you're really, what's like, do you have any good like techniques or suggestions to do with like how to keep your eyes open when you feel really drowsy?
Oh. You're feeling drowsy?
Yeah, I mean that happens a lot with me. I start to feel very drowsy, and it's hard to like keep the eyes open. They just start drooping down.
You both.
Look up. Look up. Yeah, the question is there any techniques to help with the feeling of drowsiness when you're doing meditation? I think there are, of course. One thing that you can work on is the time when you meditate, and also a little bit your physical condition in general. For example, if you sometimes if you feel a lot of drowsiness, to go for a brisk walk, to be in a bright space, a clear room where there's a lot of light. Light is very important. To look up. There are also things you can imagine, like imagine light, right? Luminous light. Things like that can help. So, for example, at one time, if you're very drowsy, then you should take a break and go for a walk or something, and then try meditating again. So the thing with meditation, so not directly related to your question, but related nonetheless, is the importance with the practice of meditation in the beginning is not try to do long sessions of meditation. Quantity is really not important at the beginning. What is very important is quality of meditation. So even if your meditation lasts just 1 or 2 seconds at the beginning, that's fine. If it only lasts 1 or 2 seconds, don't think it's bad. That is already good. The importance is the quality. What I told you, being able to let the mind be really in this natural state, calm, where it is clear and well. Even if that lasts just for a few seconds, it's fine. And then don't try to force it. If it lasts a little longer, it's very good. And if it's lasting longer, don't try to force it longer. Take a break, interrupt it, and then start over. Because if not, you will get into bad habits of meditation. And those are very difficult then to afterwards overcome. So the importance really, this is a very key point in making progress in meditation. It just emphasized a lot in the the texts on meditation in our tradition. So if the meditation is going well, that's fine, but still take a break and then come back and do. The thing is, try to repeat the short sessions. Doesn't mean don't give up. You've done only 2 seconds. Oh, I won't manage more. Then give up for many weeks. Take a break. Then afterwards, again, do again. You have to multiply the short sessions. And eventually, naturally, it will become longer and longer, comfortable. And if you feel like you're trying to force it or something, interrupt and then come back. The importance is really to come to the quality. And then if you improve the quality, like for example, if you're feeling drowsy, take a break. And then try to, at another moment of the day, whether it's early in the morning, when you wake up, or when it's very, there's nice light or something, try to do a short session. Feel it's going well, take a little break, then come back. Try to let it last longer, but without forcing it. So like that. So of course there are like special instructions you can do, like also visualizing like light above you, looking upwards a little bit like that. If there's, depending if the drowsiness is very strong, won't go away, then you should take a break.
There's a bunch of questions.
Okay.
From the folks online. One is going back to the physical posture. What about both hands together in front of your chest?
That's not the posture. That the two hands in front of your chest, that is related to more when you make prayers or when you show respect to the three jewels, when you want to show deference and respect to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, when you accompany it with, for example, the praise of the Buddhas, or you make prayers, you'll join your hands like this.
Another question is, what do you recommend doing if there is something going on with your body while meditating that your mind is focused on, such as having an itchy bug bite, having a headache, being hungry, and so on? Do you work on recognizing this feeling and attempt to let it go during the meditation? Do you try to look into it to attempt to see its essence? Or do you stop meditating, take care of it, such as scratch the bug bite or eat something, take a Tylenol, and then return to meditating?
I think if you're a good meditator, you don't have to do the second option. Just as I said earlier, your mind is starting to get distracted, agitated by this or that. So try to recognize it, and then again, just relax the mind, whether it is pain or whatever. Somehow, then if you're able to relax the mind, you'll transcend that, and you will not be bothered by it.
Is it important only to breathe through the nose, or can one breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth?
Well, generally it's recommended to just breathe in and out naturally through the nose. Unless you're doing some kind of like special breathing yoga or whatever, then that's something else.
Also, what is the position of the legs in half lotus? Is it right over left only, or does it matter?
But traditionally it's the right over the left. That's the proper posture.
This is two different questions that are related from two different people. Do you eat anything at all before the morning meditation? And then the other person asked, yeah, should one wait to meditate after a meal? If so, how long?
Well, that again depends a little bit on whether you're feeling drowsy or agitated. If you wake up, you're feeling very agitated, then maybe eating a meal before can help your mind be more calm and feel less agitated. Well, on the contrary, you're very drowsy, then better not eat. But eventually, I mean, the practice of meditation, this is like kind of recommendations for beginners. Later on, no matter what the circumstances, you should be able to do it.
And the last one that we have here is listening to ambient sounds or music permitted during meditation?
I think that if you're a beginner, you can, do that. You can use that sound, like, you focus on your breathing, just listening to that sound. But the important point is to come back to the posture of the mind we spoke about. However, that is not really a traditional method. Normally, we don't listen to ambient sounds or music in particular. It's not emphasized as a method. That's it? Okay. Do you have any questions?
You may have already covered this,
Mhm.
or I'm pretty sure you have, but what are, when you notice that your mind has started to wander meditating,
Mhm.
what is the best way to kind of bring it back to not wandering, or
To think about the posture of meditation that I talked about, just let the mind that is luminous and empty, just let it be as it is. Not try to do anything. So once you see, oh, my mind is wandering, you want to go catch it, you're going to get distracted by the whole thing. So it's like just observing the distraction that is occurring. You see it arises. As it arises, you know it, you notice it, but then immediately just not trying to do anything about it. Just let the mind kind of relax, in the sense that just let it in the natural state, and remember the point of focus. Your breathing. Just bring back your awareness to the breathing and being aware of the natural state of mind.
if you find it's happening more frequently than it was before, is there like, that mean your meditation is not effective, or does it just mean
It just
that's just your state right now?
Well, that's what happens when you meditate. In the beginning, is you might feel like you're more agitated than before, and that happens because you are starting to turn your attention on your mind, and you are actually not aware of how agitated you were before, because you're just going along in the default mode from agitation to agitation, and you're not being aware of it. When you start to be aware of your mind, then you might feel that you're even more agitation. It just means that you're starting to be aware. It's not that agitations have increased. It's your awareness of your mind's agitation is now present, so you notice it more. But eventually that will also subside, calm down. Yes.
Are there practices you should adopt alongside meditation that can help with the practice, like journaling, yoga, walking meditation, things along those lines?
You can do yoga practice is very good, walking also, some type of physical exercise, or eating properly. The basic practice is following a discipline. So the discipline is the discipline of non-violence, not harming others. Try to integrate that in your life and everything. And then also, taking care of your body, but not through attachment, just so that you can be in a good condition to be able to meditate, practice properly.
Another question from online. How about reciting mantras?
Well, in this meditation, that would be a distraction, can lead to some distraction. But there are meditations where you will associate the recitation of mantras with visualization. That's also possible, like listening to sound and so forth. Like someone was asking earlier, listening to ambient sound or music, and you can use many different subjects of kind of to keep your awareness upon, and that can be done like with mantras, with objects that you visualize and so forth, or like the air going in and out of your nostril, breathing. All of that are kind of points of focus that help you stay focused, anchor your mind from being distracted. But actually what you really want to achieve is just this calm abiding, and on this basis, recognizing true nature of your mind and being able to cultivate that innate quality of your mind. So here in the shamatha meditation, generally, and also vipassana meditation, as taught this method, you don't do recitations.
Can I ask a question off of yesterday's teaching?
Yes, sure.
We talked a lot about how our natural view of the world out there is misleading, as is the view of ourselves in here. So what is it like in Buddhist philosophy to be able to see the world with perfect clarity? And is enlightenment the only way to attain that?
That's a very vast question.
You'll need to repeat it.
Yes, the question is, yesterday in the teaching we spoke about distinguishing the fact of being focused externally, being preoccupied by our, how to say, focusing our mind externally and being preoccupied by that and by concerns of just this life versus I'm sorry, trying to understand our own mind and being focused inwardly. And what does it mean that to know reality such as it is, and is it enlightenment only means to see that? Excuse me. So to answer that, I was saying it's a vast question. There's a lot to say. So this is a question related actually to the notion of wisdom. The first point of the question, of course, is on one hand, it's our just normal way of looking at things with our attachment to our life and so forth. And the other is trying to focus what is the truth about our mind, what is the truth about reality. So your question is more, how is it to see reality ultimately? Well, that is actually quite undescribable because all descriptions are somehow a rendering, representation. Here this is kind of a direct, immediate, without representation, seeing reality as it is. And it's a non-dual, so it transcends the notion of subject and object. And it is related to just the natural state of mind as it is in its innate qualities, without any grasping, conceptualization of the mind or of reality in any form whatsoever. So it's a way of seeing without seeing. So wisdom is a way of knowing reality that transcends what we generally mean by knowing. Which doesn't mean that it's not accessible or it's just like a blank state. It's not that. It is related to the innate qualities of your mind. And we spoke this morning with Gampopa was teaching that mind is luminous in emptiness, inseparable. You see? So basically it's being able to actualize that. All our mind is always that, but we are looking at the luminous as something that is the luminous, meaning what the mind reveals many experiences. Everything the mind reveals, we don't think of it as part of the mind. We think of it as something separate from the mind, and we attribute to it permanence, substance, independence, and so forth. And we don't see that the mind is empty, and we think of it as a subject, as a self, independent from what the mind reveals to itself. This is our dualism. So the natural state is transcending that. So meaning just the mind in its natural state, where mind knows itself as luminous and empty and inseparable. So it's a way of knowing that transcends our normal way of knowing. And this is also related to the idea of emptiness. And this is what is called wisdom. So from the Buddha's perspective, he does not fall into dualism. He is not grasping what mind reveals reveals to him as something substantial, something external. It's not misled like that. Yet that doesn't mean that mind ceases to be luminous. It's still luminous and still empty, but he knows that as it is.
I have a question about, kind of, it's come up a couple of times today, but around, the idea that we need to let go of attachments and how that fits into, our lives and, day-to-day lives and the Western cultures that we live in. And so, just thinking, compete with our families, our kids, or workplaces, but we're fortunate enough to have gotten, for example, work where we are attached to things. We do go through. We have expectations. We have roles. People expect things from us. We want to do things, and if we're fortunate enough to kind of get occupations that we care about, then we are doing things that we also are attached to because we believe in some of the things that we're doing, and so how do we square kind of those things that are just sort of embedded in our day-to-day lives?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to leave those lives or can't, with the notion of letting go. And I'm guessing in some ways that has to do with ethics and
right.
having higher values, but I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I think that, we have to understand properly what letting go or detachment means. It doesn't mean...
Is it possible to summarize that?
Oh, that was kind of a long... I think the answer will give the question. It's about the meaning of detachment. Okay? And can we talk about that, because we have to, we might be concerned in our life with certain things that we like, be attached to that, maybe good things. So how do we deal with detachment? Okay, so the answer, so to speak, is that detachment has to be properly understood, in the sense it doesn't mean just being careless, or in the sense that you're totally unmoved by any situation, you don't care about anything, you totally distance yourself from everything. It doesn't mean that at all. Detachment is really about not being selfish. Attachment is about being selfish. When we say you have attachment, it's about I. You can care for other sentient beings more than you care for yourself, and so to speak, have some degree of attachment. That is not negative, that's positive. Whenever it is something that is self-centered and it's with the ego, it tends to be negative. It tends to lead to more dissatisfaction. You can have attachment to others and work for the welfare of others and care for others. That type of altruism, abnegation, which we can call also detachment to the self, that type of activity tends to bring good results for ourselves and others at the same time. There's a Buddhist scripture that says, all the happiness in this world comes from wanting the happiness of others. All the suffering in this world comes from wanting happiness for yourself alone. So in other words, simply put, selfishness is a source of pain and suffering, and it perpetuates our confusion. Altruism It's the source of well-being, happiness. It enables us to transcend our confusion. So I think that's the important point. So it's a clarification of the word attachment. But now, when we say attachment to other sentient beings, it's very different from attachment to the self. It's in the sense here that it's caring for other sentient beings, and this caring for other sentient beings, there are different degrees to it. We can work on different degrees. The first level is on the basis of how we look at things ordinarily. There's another, there's me, and so forth. Eventually, through wisdom, through the work we do on ourselves, on our own confusion, we can have this form of caring for others that is free from dualistic attachment whatsoever. So this wisdom, so to speak, will enable us to spontaneously care for others without falling into hope and fear, attachment, or distinction of I and other. And that is considered a higher form of kindness, compassion, of altruism. Because the lower form of altruism is altruism that still considers I and other, makes that distinction. Why is it a lower form? Is because it's a state of mind that is still anchored very much in the belief of the I. I'm going to be good for others. And if you transcend that dualism, then there's no I, no other. There's just kindness there. It will be spontaneously effortless. So somehow this is maybe a very imperfect and brief answer to this question, but you can read about the Bodhisattva's path, the Mahayana path, the teachings, on cultivating altruism and so forth. They will give you a lot of answers to that. Yeah, sometimes we have this idea in Buddhism that Buddhist is just like the world. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm going to go in my little retreat, just think about myself. But it's not exactly like that. It's very different from that. That's kind of a, caricature. They're made up of not understanding what Buddhism actually is about. Buddhism is about actually really having a positive impact all around you. And that can start by working with you on yourself. So you're trying to have a positive impact on yourself as well as on others. And all the teachings, methods the Buddha taught, if you look at it, the vows, you can take them related to ethical discipline and all that, it's all a way of life, way of being, which is without harm to others, without harm to ourselves, first of all. And then on top of that, beneficial to ourselves, beneficial to others. It's truly, the Buddhist path in this way is truly the source of well-being, of immediate well-being, relative well-being, and ultimate well-being. And the practice of the teachings enable us to, go from happiness to happiness, bring about well-being and happiness to others, and transcend all fear of death, and again, true freedom for ourselves and true effective benefit for others. Yes? Yes.
When you say I guess, how do you distinguish compassion from empathy? Like, for example, someone else is in pain and you start to literally feel the pain they're in, or at least, is that just another example of not being able to separate the I? Like how do you, what's like a Buddhist view of that and a good way to do it?
Well, compassion is, of course, related to seeing the pain and suffering of others and being very much affected by it. But the main purpose of compassion is to overcome our attachment to our own well-being. That means without compassion, you won't go out there and make the effort to help others. To go out there and help others means you have to have courage. It's not just that you are touched by the difficulty of sentient beings, that you have also the courage to go out there and kind of jeopardize your own well-being so to help others overcome their suffering. And compassion is a bit strong. You will not do that with, you'll have no hesitation to do that. You do it with joy. It says Bodhisattvas, great Bodhisattvas are like, when they see beings that are in pain and suffering, even if it's hell, their compassion is such that they will plunge into hell joyfully, like the elephants in the heat of the summer jump into the river without hesitation to cool themselves. A little bit in the same way, the Bodhisattvas' love and compassion for sentient beings are so great that they have no hesitation to endure even the greatest difficulties if they know they can really help. But that such kind of attitude and intention and action is possible because of this compassion. And and compassion makes it so that you don't feel like you're sacrificing something or doing difficult. Sometimes people think, oh, I'm doing something, but I'm sacrificing something. They're keeping account of what they're doing. It's lack of compassion. Your ego is still there. Because you're counting on what it costs you. When you do it without hesitation, that means that you have true compassion. The image of the Bodhisattva, willingly and deliberately choosing to go to hell to benefit sentient beings, like an elephant joyfully jumping into the river to cool itself. It's a beautiful image. And see how you can do that. What you would need to be able to have that type of attitude. You need to have really no attachment to yourself or concern for yourself. Your concern for others overwhelms you such that it's without hesitation. And also your confidence in the understanding of the teachings. You have no fear. Somehow without the teachings, without understanding emptiness, and so forth, people have a lot of fear. The fear also comes with their attachment to the ego. All right. Yes. So I guess there's no more questions. We'll conclude here. Online, there's no more questions. But thank you very much for your attention. I hope this was beneficial and brought you more clarity in your understanding of the teachings. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow and everyone on the internet. So good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thank you. And now to conclude, I would invite you all to dedicate merit of our learning of the Dharma to the benefit of all sentient beings. Through this merit, may I attain true omniscience, and having overcome all harmful destructive forces, may I liberate sentient beings from the ocean of existence and its turbulent waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. This mind of awakening that has not yet awoken to our minds, once arisen, may it never decline, may it continue to increase no more. May the most precious mind of awakening that is not yet dawned in our lives, once arisen, may it never decline, may it continue to increase evermore. May the most precious mind of awakening that is not yet dawned in our lives, once arisen, may it never decline, may it continue to increase evermore.